Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick. How are you guys? It's time once again to talk about the X-Wing meta because we had a couple more regionals for the Australian season of 2018 X-Wing played over the last weekend. Now, full disclosure, if you guys are watching this in real time, I will not be able to get the video on the other regionals done in time before I go on a bit of a break, so that's going to have to be done next week. For the time being, we are going to talk about the South Australian regionals, and in particular the uprising of another new list that seems to be taking dominance in the meta. The meta over the last couple of months has really been in flux. It's a case of these top tier lists being beaten out one after the other by the next up and coming list, which is good. It means that the meta is not being too dominated by one thing. I was concerned for the longest time there that harpoon missiles were being a bit oppressive on the meta. Thankfully, not all of these lists that I'm talking about include harpoon missiles, which is a very good sign moving forward. I think everything looks really healthy moving forward, and that's just awesome moving forward in the world of X-Wing. But for the time being, let's take a look at the results from the South Australia Regionals Top 8. So first of all, the faction breakdown. We had one Lonely Scum list, 3 Imperialists, and 4 Rebel lists. This is not surprising at all. Oh, how the mighty have fallen with the Scum faction. Basically, all these lists I was talking about just before, all these lists that seem to be coming into dominance, Nim Miranda, Palpaces, Kylo with 2 Rogue Squadron pilots, Fenn and Kanan, all of these are from the original 2 factions. Scum, over the last couple of waves, just hasn't gotten a home run ship that seems to be really making up for the fact that it really lost the Jump Master last November. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when we get wave 14, how this faction moves forward, but hopefully it gets a bit more balanced out than what we're seeing here. The ship size breakdown was pretty much what you'd expect for a normal tournament. 6 big ships and 15 small, totaling 21. The squad sizes were not that creative, to be honest. We had a total of 3 lists with 2 ships and 5 lists with 3 ships. None with 4 and none with 5. No swarms this time, just your good bog standard low number of ship lists that just get the job done. As for the ships being used, the winner by a long margin was the Uztak gunship. With a 4 of, we had a few different Lowrix and generics floating around in there. We had 3 quick draws in his TIE SF, 2 Captain Yaws in the Lambda shuttle, 2 Inquisitors and 2 Miranda Donis. And in the 1-ofs we had Rear Admiral Shenru, Dash Rendar, Zeb Aurelius in the attack shuttle, the Lothal Rebel in the VCX 100, the Rebel Captain Nim, Bosk, Thweek and Unka Plut. And those bottom 3 we see there all make up that one Scum list. And talking about that, let's bring it up here on the screen for you guys to see. Because I gotta say, this list here is very, very spicy, and it's just something that really makes me scratch my head. Not because I think it's terrible or anything, but honestly, if someone was to present this list to me outside of a tournament, not mentioning it's going to take it to a regional or something, I'd say, oh yeah, that looks like fun, probably a bit of good casual value, but it's not something that I'd generally consider that would do well in the competitive scene. However, for all the cards here that we generally don't consider as being high value, you have to admit there's a lot of great synergy going on. Jabba the Hutt is a pretty meh card in the current meta. There's no real good platformer usage for him. But we do have a couple of shots with the Hotshot Blaster, and that's relevant with Bosk. He's also armed with a Score to Settle, meaning Bosk can use that Hotshot Blaster to potentially use his pilot ability, and that feels really good. It also means the double activation on Contraband Cybernetics down on Thweek here. And that's really, really good. Thweek can take a very high pilot skill, and to have Contraband Cybernetics on an ace is really, really potent. To be able to use it twice is just even better. That's just gravy. What's interesting though is there's no illicit upgrades on Unka Plut. They haven't really pushed Jabba to that extreme. But I guess just having a look at the 2 he has included, yeah, it just looks really good and interesting. Unka Plut is a very basic build for the quad jumper. I quite like it a lot. I generally favour Intel Agent over Boshek myself, but Boshek is still really good. Unka Plut is tilted more towards wanting to bump, so Boshek does make a bit more sense in this list. We've got a pretty standard build on Thweek, and going over to Bosk, we have, yeah, a Score to Settle, Gonk, Jabba the Hutt, Hotshot Blaster, and Experimental Interface. Now, the Gonk Experimental Interface package is interesting. It's 5 points, and basically, if you cap out all your actions in one turn, you can recover 1 shield, which I've never been a huge fan of, to be honest. However, he does have a score to settle, and that could really hurt him if your opponent starts shooting into your hull, so I guess that means regenerating shield is a big deal in this, I get that. I don't know, I just find that quite bizarre. It's spicy, don't get me wrong, but I've never felt that the Gong experimental interface package is worth 5 points and spending all of the actions and taking a stress token every turn. I just don't think it's very efficient. But obviously, it's found a bit of value in this list, and yeah, it's just one of those interesting lists that I want to have a quick chat about, because on the surface, it just looks like a whole lot of weird, janky upgrades, but for whatever reason, they've found a home on this list, and it's done all right in a competitive tournament. Moving on to this list called Low Blow Lothal, we have a bit of a variation on the old Lorik Kanan combination. Instead of Kanan Jarrus, we have Lothal Rebel, and using the points that have been saved, we've stacked a lot more points on Lorik and a little bit more on the VCX 100. Lorik has Expertise, Bistan, and Tactician, and that is a super aggressive build for Lorik. I like that a lot. Expertise is cool because you can turn your eyeball results into hits, and if you're in range 1 to 2, you can then turn one of those into a crit. It means if you, say, are firing at range 2 and you roll 2 eyeball results, you then turn them into a hit and a crit, and that's really good. It's an expensive combo, but Lorik is always going to hit really hard. 3 red dice, 180-degree firing arc, it's going to be a lot of fun. Tactician, yeah, great value on the ship, I don't need so much about that. Zeb Aurelius, I mean, look, Zeb's there because he activates the TLT twice in the Lothal Rebel. And the Lothal Rebel is just good across the board, great cards. We've chucked in the Courier Droid, means he doesn't have to deploy at PS3. Instead, he can deploy at PS8 after Lorik, and that feels really good. Definitely a great use of 0 points and a crew slot. Tactician is fantastic on this ship because it has 2 firing arcs, TLT fire control systems, tactical jammer. Yeah, it's just all really good, high value stuff. You're not relying on the synergy of, saying, having Kanan Jarrus with like a Kyle Katarn or a Ray and a recon spec. Nothing like that. Just good, powerful raw frame tactics. I really like this approach, and it's good to see you don't always have to rely on pilot abilities to get you over the line with some of these more competitive lists. And there's one last list I want to talk about that made the top 8 before we go on to the winner, and this uses 3 Azatec gunships, which I think is quite interesting because we've seen a bit of play of the 4 of list that has 4 Kashyyyk defenders with Wookiee commandos. Instead, this is using Lorik with 2 Wookiee liberators. Lorik has Predator, Ray, and Tactician. The Wookiee liberators both have Expertise and Tactician, and one of them has Inspiring Recruit. Now, Inspiring Recruit's interesting. I don't think it has all the best value in this list, but I guess for 1 point, what we have here is protection against stress control, and that's good. It's really good, considering both of these ships have expertise. It means Asajj is going to be much more hard-pressed to shut down that expertise, and you're going to be slinging a lot of red dice and converting a lot of results, which just feels good. Plus, the list has some really good stress control itself. Tactician is just fantastic on the Azatec gunship. It's proving to be a more popular card these days in Rebel lists because there are just so many good, solid platforms for it to go on nowadays, which is good to see. The card's really fun. It's been in the game a long time, but it's never really seen this much play, and I quite like how it's being applied these days. But without further ado, let's move on to the winning list here by Jaren Foss, brother of Travis Foss, who won the last regionals tournament I was talking about. And look, surprise, surprise, deja vu, here again is Quick Draw Inquisitor and Captain Yor. And guys, I will tell you right now, I'm not going to have this video ready for the next few days, but the Tasmanian Regionals tournament was also won by this very same list. It's very powerful. It's basically the up-and-coming list right now. It's probably going to take more regionals tournaments. I myself will be playing in the Victorian Regionals in a month's time, and I'll be interested to see whether this is still there. Look, I'm not going to go into details on this list. I already have in the past, but when all these regional tournaments wrap up, I'm going to do a recap of all the winning lists and go into this in more detail. Needless to say, it's very powerful, and it's interesting because it's not the atypical style of pulp aces listed we've seen in the previous years. I will talk more about this in future videos, but for the time being, guys, head over to the link provided below if you'd like to see the rest of the details on this tournament. I was asked in the previous video if I could show off all the lists from the top 8, so here they are on the screen for you guys to see. Link in the description if you'd like to see all the other stats from this tournament. But in the meantime, guys, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and I will catch you later.